Think, think, think. We think during our every waking moment, don't we? Do we really know how to think logically? Do we sometimes avoid thinking things through so we might be free to act on our whims? The first of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is being proactive. He makes a distinction between being reactive and proactive. Being reactive is like Pavlov's dog, who was conditioned to salivate every time he heard a bell, simply by ringing a bell every time they fed him. Being proactive is where we utilize our uniquely human faculty of thinking so that we make our own choices, not letting any bell control us. However, being proactive does not come automatically. Reacting like Pavlov's dog does. Anyone who has ever had sales training knows that the majority of people buy emotionally and rationalize their decisions only after the purchase is made. Salespeople are trained to exploit this. If they are ethical, they seek a win-win outcome where they can provide you with a product or service that benefits you while helping them to earn a living. However, there have always been con artists, politicians, and dictators who have no such qualms and will manipulate you in order to get their way, which historically has included persuading you that someone is your enemy so that you should take up arms to harm them or march to your own death. Watching old films of the Second World War show Adolf Hitler having a hypnotic effect on his fellow countrymen that eventually led to some of history's darkest moments. If you've ever heard the expression of some action being Machiavellian, it refers to the author Niccolò Machiavelli, who wrote a book in the 16th century entitled The Prince. Essentially, it's a how-to guide for would-be dictators, how to achieve and maintain power over others utilizing whatever means necessary. Interestingly, it is considered a classic. Our brain is what sets us apart from animals. It is our tool of survival. Naked in the wild, we are in big trouble, but we've used our brains to stay warm, fill our bellies, and have Zoom meetings. Historically, it could be argued that a minority of people have done the majority of the logical thinking. Ever heard of Pareto's 80-20 rule? Could 80% of thinking be done by 20% of people? We are all in this meeting thanks to technologies that, speaking for myself, might as well be magic when it comes to explaining how they work. But they aren't magic. They are the result of logical thinkers for whom I am very grateful. But logic can be used for good or evil, to help people or to rule people. Our freedom and our survival may well depend on being able to see through attempts to control us like marionettes on strings. We currently find ourselves at a time of extreme divisiveness, where it seems that society is regressing to a tribal time where people are for or against groups, as opposed to thinking of themselves and treating each other as individuals. One of the ways dictators have historically come to power is by first turning people against each other, and when chaos occurs, they sweep in to restore order and then take over. If you think this sounds far-fetched, I suggest you become a student of history. It is often scarier than anything Stephen King could come up with. So what are we to do about this? Leonard Peikoff suggests, to save the world is the simplest thing in the world. All one has to do is think. I take this to mean thinking for ourselves as opposed to letting someone else do our thinking for us. And that means question everything. Do you believe something because many others seem to believe it? Careful with that one. Mark Twain said, if you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. Reflect. Another word for think. In closing, one of the many slogans used in 12-step programs such as Alcoholics Anonymous is think, think, think. I started by suggesting that we may sometimes avoid thinking logically in order to allow us to act on our whims. This allows us to do what we want for short-term gratification without considering the long-term consequences. The slogan, think, 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 refers to the need to use our brains to consider the morality and the consequences of our decisions. Before any evil act is committed, it is first preceded by a decision not to think. That is, again, not to fully consider the morality and the consequence of our actions, or of our inaction in the face of evil. Reality dictates, however, that we reap what we sow, and the consequences can not only harm us, those we care about, but society at large. So, fellow Toastmasters, think, think, think.